When a pregnant wife looked across the dinner table and told her husband, "My lover will be the godfather of our baby, and he'll be named after him," the world that once called her blessed fell into silence. Ethan Cole, a respected corporate lawyer who built empires through integrity, never imagined betrayal could sit this close to home, inside his marriage, inside his own firm. Ava, his beautiful wife, smiled that night as if love was still alive, but her words cut deeper than any courtroom verdict. How could a woman so cherished turn her husband's best friend into her secret lover? How could the man Ethan trusted with billion-dollar deals also steal the one thing money could never buy? His family. She thought she had control, that he would simply forgive, but what he did next would shake their city, their business, and every lie she ever built. Who was Ethan Cole before that dinner? And what kind of man did betrayal force him to become? The Cole residence was calm that evening, the kind of calm that masks storms. The dinner table glowed beneath warm lighting, the kind Ethan had installed years ago to make their home feel intimate after long hours at the firm. He sat opposite his wife, Ava, the woman he had built his world around, the same woman who was now 6 months pregnant with what he believed was their third child. Ava wore a silk emerald dress that shimmered with each small movement. Her phone sat face down beside her plate. She'd been distant lately, more confident, more defiant. Ethan noticed. He noticed everything. The laughter had become rehearsed, the affection mechanical, yet he said nothing. He'd learned that silence often reveals more than questions. She cut her steak delicately and said, "Marcus stopped by today." Ethan looked up from his plate. Marcus Hale, his business partner, best friend for 15 years. They co-owned one of Chicago's most prestigious corporate law firms. "Oh?" Ethan replied mildly. "Did he?" Ava smiled faintly. "He brought gifts for the baby." She paused, then placed her fork down. "I told him something I've been meaning to tell you too." He leaned back, fork in hand, studying her face. She seemed almost rehearsed, like she was stepping onto a stage. "I want Marcus to be the godfather," she said softly. "And I want our son to be named after him." Ethan froze. His fork hovered midair. The clock behind her ticked once, twice. The only other sound was the hum of the refrigerator. "Named after Marcus?" he repeated slowly. "Yes," she said, her tone calm, almost proud. "He's been there for me through everything. I just feel he deserves that honor." Ethan stared at her, his pulse a quiet drum in his ears. He didn't yell. He didn't move. He only looked into her eyes long enough to see the flicker of guilt behind the arrogance. He took a slow sip of water, then asked gently, "Does Marcus know about this honor?" Ava's lips curved. "He does." And there it was. The first crack, a confession wrapped in subtlety. Ethan's chest felt heavy, but his face remained expressionless. "Interesting," he murmured, setting down his glass. "You always did like surprises." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, quickly, nervously. Ethan didn't miss the name that flashed before the screen went dark. Marcus Hale. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he smiled faintly, a gesture of eerie calm. "Well," he said, "if Marcus is to be godfather, we should make sure he's there for the birth, don't you think?" She nodded, relieved. "I'm glad you understand." He rose from his chair and kissed her forehead lightly. "Of course," he whispered. "I understand perfectly." But as he turned away, his eyes hardened. Not with anger, but with the kind of silence that precedes a meticulously planned storm. His phone buzzed too, a message from Marcus. "She told you yet?" Ethan's fingers tightened around the phone. He didn't reply, but his calm smile returned. This time, it wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. Ethan stood by the living room window long after Ava had gone to bed. The city outside was alive, the rhythmic hum of traffic, the distant glow of skyscrapers, the sound of a city that believed in control and order. But inside, his world had shifted, quietly, irreversibly. He stared at his reflection in the glass, a man in a tailored shirt, sleeves rolled to the forearms, jaw tense. For years, he'd believed in the discipline of logic. every case, every merger, every verdict built on evidence and patience. Tonight, he would use that same discipline to dissect his own life. Ava's laughter echoed faintly from upstairs. He couldn't unhear the way she'd said, "Marcus deserves that honor." It wasn't a wife speaking. It was a woman flaunting control, testing how far she could push before breaking her husband's silence. He reached for his phone. Marcus's message still glared on the screen. "She told you yet?" The arrogance behind those words was louder than a confession. Ethan typed a single reply, "Yes," then deleted it before hitting send. Let them wonder what he knew. Let them feel the weight of uncertainty. The next morning, Ethan woke early and kissed Ava's forehead before leaving for work. She smiled in her sleep, thinking the storm had passed. But storms don't pass. They build quietly like pressure under glass. At the firm, Marcus greeted him with his usual grin, the one that had closed $100 million deals. "Rough night?" he teased. Ethan smiled back. "Just thinking about the future," he said smoothly. "Ava mentioned something about you being Godfather." Marcus's eyes flickered, just for a second, too quick for anyone else to notice, but Ethan saw it. "She did?" Marcus said, feigning surprise. "That's flattering." Ethan chuckled lightly. "It is. You've been a good friend to her. To us. Always will be." "Good," Ethan said, voice level. "I like knowing my family's surrounded by loyalty." The silence that followed was surgical. Marcus broke it with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "You know me, brother. Loyalty is everything." Ethan clapped him on the shoulder. "I know," he said. "I just want to make sure everyone remembers that." That evening back home, Ava moved through the house, humming softly as if nothing had happened. She chatted about nursery colors, weekend plans, and baby names. Ethan listened, nodding occasionally, every gesture calm, rehearsed. But later, as she showered, he opened her laptop. Her messages were synced. Every conversation, every picture, every stolen word between her and Marcus. He read them all in silence. The late night, "I miss yous," the promises, the fantasies. One message stopped him cold. "Ava, he'll never find out. He trusts you more than anyone." Marcus, "He should. I helped build him." Ethan leaned back in the chair, chest tight, yet strangely steady. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was engineered. His best friend hadn't just stolen his wife, he'd conspired to humiliate him. He copied the entire conversation to a flash drive, then erased the browsing history. When Ava came downstairs later, towel around her hair, she smiled at him from the kitchen doorway. "You're still working?" He looked up from the couch, laptop open on a blank document. "Just some firm matters," he said. "You know how mergers are." She nodded, walked over, and kissed his cheek. "You work too hard, Ethan." He smiled faintly. "Not hard enough," he said under his breath. That night, as she slept peacefully beside him, Ethan stared at the ceiling, not as a husband mourning a betrayal, but as a strategist building a case. He no longer needed answers. He needed timing. By morning, his first move would begin, and neither Ava nor Marcus would see it coming. Ethan arrived at the office before sunrise. The skyline outside his window was painted in shades of steel and amber, the color of beginnings or perhaps of endings. He sat at his desk in silence, his fingers steepled beneath his chin as he replayed every word, every touch, every stolen glance between Ava and Marcus that he had ignored. His greatest flaw, he realized, wasn't trust. It was underestimation. By 7, he had already begun to rewire his world. He called his tech consultant, Victor, a quiet genius who had helped him encrypt sensitive case files in the past. "I need a digital forensics sweep," Ethan said. "Everything that leaves this office, every device linked to our cloud server. I want full tracking." Victor hesitated. "That includes Marcus's workstation?" "Especially his." Ethan ended the call and turned to the framed photo on his shelf. Their firm's first major win. He and Marcus, side by side, holding champagne glasses, their wives smiling in the background. That image used to symbolize trust. Now it was evidence of irony. By mid-morning, Marcus strolled into the office, coffee in hand, humming like a man who owned the world. "Big day," he said. "The Callahan merger meeting's at 10. Ethan smiled politely. Yes, let's make it count. During the meeting, Ethan watched Marcus. The subtle arrogance in the way he spoke, the possessive tone when he mentioned our firm. The man had started taking liberties, speaking as though Ethan's empire were his inheritance. After the session, Ethan approached Claire Adams, his associate, sharp, discreet, and fiercely loyal. Claire, he said quietly, I need you to recheck all Callahan merger communications. Look for any off-the-record transfers or unapproved clauses. She frowned. You think Marcus is tampering? I think Marcus has forgotten who signs his checks, he replied. Back home that evening, Ava was folding baby clothes on the couch when he entered. You're home late again, she said, pretending disappointment. Work doesn't end itself, he said lightly, removing his tie. Besides, I want to make sure we're ready for the baby. She smiled faintly. You've been distant, Ethan. Are you angry about what I said the other night? He looked up, meeting her gaze. Why would I be angry? You've made your choice. She blinked. Choice? He gestured vaguely. Godfather, baby names. You've got everything planned. I just want to be supportive. Ava hesitated, unsure whether to feel relieved or suspicious. You've changed, she said quietly. He smiled. Change is healthy. Later that night, when she fell asleep, Ethan slipped from bed and opened his study. The flash drive glinted under the lamp. He inserted it into his laptop, reading every message again, methodical, emotionless. Then he printed a few key exchanges, labeling them carefully. One folder read, Evidence, Betrayal, Primary. Another, Evidence, Financial Fraud, Pending. He wasn't just collecting proof of infidelity, he was mapping leverage. If Marcus thought he had stolen Ethan's wife, Ethan would soon own Marcus's future. At midnight, he received an encrypted file from Victor, an email log from Marcus's server. One thread stood out. Subject line, Contingency Plan. Marcus had been transferring firm client funds into an offshore account under Ava's maiden name. Ethan stared at the screen, his pulse steady. So that's your plan, he murmured. Build a new life with my wife, using my company's money. He clicked download, saving the entire chain. Upstairs, Ava stirred in her sleep. Ethan, she murmured faintly. He turned off the light and whispered, Rest, Ava. You'll need it for what's coming. He closed the laptop and leaned back, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Calculating. He had built fortunes for others, defended corporations against impossible odds. But now he would apply every weapon of the law, not for clients, but for justice. And justice, this time, had a name. The next week unfolded like clockwork, each second ticking toward a truth Ava and Marcus couldn't imagine. Ethan's calm demeanor had returned. Not the warmth of peace, but the precision of a predator moving through familiar terrain. In the courtroom of marriage and business, he had just filed his first motion. Patience. At breakfast, Ava poured him coffee, watching him carefully. You've been so quiet lately, she said, her tone light but probing. You're not still upset about what I said, are you? Ethan smiled faintly. Upset? No. I just like understanding things before reacting. She exhaled in relief, mistaking restraint for forgiveness. He reached across the table, brushing his fingers against hers, gentle and deliberate. By the way, he added casually, Marcus invited me to dinner tonight. Said he wants to discuss firm expansions. Ava's hand froze. Dinner? Yes, just business, of course. Her smile trembled. You should go. I intend to. At 8 that evening, Ethan pulled up at Marcus's penthouse. The city lights reflected off the glass tower as he entered. Confidence cloaked in civility. Marcus greeted him with open arms, his grin wide and practiced. Brother, about time you loosened up. Whiskey? Ethan accepted the glass. Why not? They sat across from each other, two men who had built an empire together, each hiding his weapon behind a smile. So, Ethan began, swirling his drink, the Callahan merger, you're sure the numbers add up? Marcus smirked. Of course. You doubt me now. Ethan chuckled softly. Never. I just like accuracy. You know how clients hate surprises. Marcus leaned back. Relax, Ethan. You worry too much. Let me handle things. Ethan raised his glass. Oh, I will. They toasted, but the clink sounded hollow, a prelude to ruin. As Marcus went to refill their drinks, Ethan's eyes scanned the room. On the counter lay a photo, Marcus and Ava, laughing together at a charity gala months ago. The image wasn't public. It was taken from a private angle, the kind meant for secret memories, not friendship. He picked it up slowly, studying the smiles. When Marcus returned, Ethan set it down carefully. "You two make quite the team," he said evenly. Marcus stiffened. "What do you mean?" "Just an observation," Ethan replied, draining his glass. "Some partnerships go deeper than paperwork." Marcus's laughter came too quickly. "You're imagining things." "Maybe," Ethan said, standing. "Or maybe I'm just beginning to see clearly." He left without another word. Outside, his car idled under the streetlights. He pulled out his phone and opened a message to Victor. "Send everything. Offshore accounts, transactions, everything tied to Hale and Ava Cole." By morning, the file arrived. A full breakdown of stolen funds, disguised under shell companies. Marcus had been bleeding their firm slowly, methodically, and using Ava's identity as his shield. That night, as Ava stood by the window of their bedroom, staring into the distance, Ethan approached quietly. "You saw Marcus tonight?" she asked, voice low. "I did," he said. "How was he?" Ethan smiled thinly, confident, like a man about to lose everything. She turned to him, frowning. "What's that supposed to mean?" He leaned close, his tone calm, intimate. "It means, Ava, that I finally understand who I married and who I've been feeding." She stepped back, uneasy. "You're scaring me." "No," he said softly. "Not yet." He kissed her forehead gently, then whispered, "Sleep well." When she looked up again, he was gone, leaving behind only silence and a faint sense that something irreversible had just begun. Outside in his car, Ethan drafted an email to his private investigator. "Begin surveillance on Ava Cole and Marcus Hale. Daily logs. Discretion absolute." He hit send, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled. Ethan's plan was no longer a theory. It was now a case file, structured, numbered, and sealed in folders beneath his office drawer. The betrayal was personal, but the revenge would be professional, legal, and absolute. Everything Ava and Marcus had built on deception was about to collapse under evidence, not emotion. The investigators' reports came in daily. Photos of Marcus and Ava meeting in hidden cafes, a pattern of calls and texts, car logs showing midnight visits when Ethan was working late. He reviewed everything with unnerving calm, cross-referencing each timestamp against Marcus's corporate activity. Every betrayal had a paper trail. Ethan just had to follow it to the bank. By Friday morning, he walked into the firm as though nothing was wrong. Marcus was already in the boardroom, laughing with a few junior partners. "Morning, Ethan," he greeted. "Ready for the Callahan review?" Ethan nodded. "Absolutely. But before that, let's have a quick private talk." They stepped into Marcus's glass-walled office. Ethan closed the door and placed a manila folder on the table. "What's this?" Marcus asked. "Due diligence," Ethan said quietly. "I ran a compliance audit on all merger-related accounts. You know, standard protocol." Marcus smirked. "You're paranoid, brother." Ethan smiled back, his expression unreadable. "Maybe, but I prefer paranoia to prison." Marcus's grin faltered. He opened the folder and froze. Inside were screenshots of wire transfers, shell company registrations, and email trails linking him to offshore accounts. "Where did you get these?" he demanded, voice rising. Ethan's tone stayed calm. "From your arrogance, mostly." For the first time, Marcus looked afraid. "You wouldn't—" "I already did," Ethan interrupted, walking toward the window. "You used my firm to launder your greed. You used my wife to cover your tracks. And you used my name to hide your sins. Tell me, Marcus, do you think I built a billion-dollar law firm by not anticipating betrayal?" Marcus tried to compose himself. "We can fix this, Ethan. We can—" Ethan turned, his eyes sharp. "No, Marcus, you can fix this. You'll return every cent, resign from the firm, and stay quiet. Otherwise, I forward these to the SEC and the district attorney before noon." The silence between them was electric. Finally, Marcus exhaled. You're bluffing. Ethan picked up his phone, opened his mail app, and hovered his thumb over send. Try me. Marcus's voice cracked. Fine, I'll step down. Ethan studied him, then nodded slowly. Good. I'll draft your resignation letter. When Ethan left the office, Marcus collapsed into his chair, sweat glistening on his temple. He didn't yet know that Ethan had no intention of mercy. The resignation was only step one of 7. That evening, Ava waited at home, dressed elegantly, a candlelit dinner set for 2. You've been so distant lately, she said softly when he entered. I made your favorite, steak and red wine. He looked around the table, at the effort, at the illusion. You didn't have to, he said. I wanted to remind you that we're okay, she whispered, touching his hand, that nothing's changed. He smiled faintly. Everything's changed, Ava. Her brows knit. What do you mean? Ethan stood, walked to the sideboard and poured himself a glass of wine. Marcus resigned today. Her fork froze midair. Resigned? Why? He turned slowly, eyes meeting hers. Maybe he realized not every man forgives betrayal. She swallowed hard, pulse quickening. Ethan, what are you saying? He leaned forward slightly, voice almost kind. I'm saying, my dear, that you should start preparing. The Godfather's about to lose his empire, and you're going down with him. Her face went pale. What have you done? He smiled thinly, the calm before a storm. Justice, Ava. Just justice. Ava could feel the tension settling in the house like a fog. Ethan was colder now, measured, polite, but unreachable. He still slept beside her, still kissed her on the forehead each morning, yet every gesture carried a distance that terrified her. She didn't know that while she worried about saving her marriage, Ethan was already halfway through dismantling her world. At the firm, Marcus's resignation hit the partners like a bomb. He claimed burnout and personal reasons, but whispers spread. Ethan, calm and articulate, told the board it was an internal restructuring. Behind the scenes, he was already redirecting every client Marcus had ever touched. Within 48 hours, Marcus's access was revoked, and his office was emptied by compliance staff. His name was erased from the firm's website before noon. That afternoon, Ethan sat in his private conference room, reviewing a folder labeled Paternity Audit. He had asked for DNA verification, not out of curiosity, but closure. The private lab had returned the results that morning. The envelope lay unopened before him. His hand hovered above it for a long moment before he finally tore it open. Negative. The baby wasn't his. Neither was the older one. Only their first child, Grace, was biologically his. The rest were Marcus's. The paper blurred for a second before Ethan set it down carefully, exhaling once, long and silent. No tears. Just the deep, hollow acknowledgement that the family he built was a carefully constructed lie. By evening, he had already made 3 calls. His attorney, a financial investigator, a family court specialist. No rage, no revenge speeches, just execution. Every detail planned like a high-stakes legal strategy. When he arrived home, Ava was sitting on the couch with the ultrasound photos spread around her. You didn't come home last night, she said softly. I was worried. I had work, Ethan replied. A lot to process. She stood, approaching him. Ethan, I know things have been strange lately. I can fix this. I can... He cut her off gently. Ava, when you said Marcus should be Godfather, did you mean Godfather or father? She froze. What? He met her eyes, calm, unwavering. You see, I've always admired your confidence. You were so sure I'd never look beyond what you let me see. But now I have, and I know everything. Her breath caught. Ethan, please. He held up a hand. Don't lie again. I'm done collecting those. She stared at him, trembling. You went through my things? I went through our life, he said quietly. Turns out it belonged to someone else. Tears spilled down her face. I didn't mean for it to happen. He stepped closer, voice low and deliberate. You meant every word, Ava. Every lie was rehearsed. Every kiss was borrowed. But I'm not here to argue. I'm here to return everything that isn't mine. What do you mean? She whispered. He smiled faintly. Tomorrow morning, you'll receive 2 documents. One's for divorce, The other for paternity disavowal. Her legs nearly gave out. You can't, Ethan, please. Don't punish the children. They're not mine to punish, he said, stepping past her. You made sure of that. She grabbed his arm, desperate. I'll lose everything. He turned, eyes cold. You already did. He left her standing in the quiet, clutching the ultrasound photo as though it could rewrite time. Upstairs, she heard the sound of a suitcase unzipping. Ethan packing, not in rage, but with precision. For years, he had defended clients who lost everything to betrayal. Now he finally understood what they felt when they looked at him across a courtroom and said, I just want justice. And for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole wanted the same. The morning light filtered through the blinds as Ethan stood in front of the mirror, adjusting his cufflinks with precision. Every movement was deliberate, calm, the reflection of a man who had chosen control over chaos. On the dresser beside him lay 2 envelopes, one marked divorce, the other paternity termination. His silence now had a legal form, and by the end of the day, Ava would finally understand what it meant to lose a man who never raised his voice. Downstairs, Ava sat motionless, clutching her coffee mug as if it were her last comfort. The air between them was heavy, colder than any winter they'd shared. Ethan walked in, briefcase in hand, his expression neutral. He set the envelopes on the counter. You'll need to sign these by the end of the day, he said quietly. Her voice broke. Ethan, please, don't do this. We can fix it. The kids, he interrupted softly. Grace will be fine. She's the only one who's mine. The others belong where they came from. She gasped, tears welling up. You had a DNA test? He met her eyes. I had the truth tested. He turned toward the door, but her voice stopped him. Ethan, please, think about what you're doing. You'll destroy everything. He paused, his back still turned. Ava, everything was destroyed the moment you looked at me and said another man's name would live in my house. She covered her mouth, sobbing. I didn't mean... Yes, you did, he said quietly. You meant every word. Then he walked out, leaving her in the silence she had created. At the firm, whispers spread like wildfire. Marcus had gone underground, selling his sports car, liquidating accounts, panic disguised as strategy. Ethan, meanwhile, met with his legal team. File the divorce under marital fraud, he instructed, and make sure the paternity documents are public record. No confidentiality clauses. Claire, his associate, hesitated. That will expose everything, Ethan. The media, he nodded. Let them see. Let them all see. By afternoon, Ava received the court filings via courier. Her hands shook as she read each line. Adultery, paternity deception, financial conspiracy. The words felt like bricks crushing her chest. She called Marcus immediately. Ethan knows, she whispered. He knows everything. Marcus's voice trembled. Stay calm. I'll fix it. Fix it, she shouted. He has the DNA results, the bank records, everything. He's coming for us. For the first time, Marcus had no plan. I'll talk to him, he muttered, but Ava could hear the fear in his voice. That evening, as the sun sank over Chicago, Ava drove to Ethan's office, mascara streaking her face. She waited by the glass doors until he appeared. Ethan, please, she said, blocking his path. Don't take my children from me. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. You took them from me the day you lied about who they belonged to. Ethan, I love you, she cried. He tilted his head slightly. You love the comfort I gave you, but love doesn't betray for convenience. She reached for his arm, but he stepped back. You wanted Marcus to be Godfather, he said evenly. Now you'll watch him bury his own future instead. Her tears fell harder, her voice cracking. You're not the man I married. He gave a faint, bitter smile. No, that man believed you. He walked past her and into the elevator, leaving her alone in the lobby, trembling under the fluorescent lights. Outside, rain began to fall, the city glistening under a storm it didn't see coming. Tomorrow, the courtroom would open, and the world would finally know who had built their fortune on lies. The courtroom was full before the session even began. Reporters lined the hallway, cameras flashing, eager for a headline that already read like fiction. Prominent corporate lawyer sues wife and business partner for fraud and paternity deception. But nothing about this was fiction. Every allegation, Every exhibit, every betrayal in ink was real. Ava sat at the defendant's table, her posture stiff, eyes swollen from nights without sleep. Marcus sat beside her, equally pale, but trying to hide it behind forced composure. Across from them, Ethan sat quietly with his counsel, his demeanor calm, tailored, immovable. He wore a gray suit, not the black one he used for major trials. He didn't want to look like a man at war. He wanted to look like justice. The judge entered and silence swept the room. Case of Ethan Cole versus Ava Cole and Marcus Hale, the clerk announced. Allegations, marital fraud, paternity deception, and corporate conspiracy. Ava's lawyer rose first, speaking of emotion, family, forgiveness, trying to paint Ethan as cold and unyielding. But when it was Ethan's turn, he didn't rise with emotion. He rose with precision. He spoke softly, but every word carried the weight of evidence. Your Honor, he began, I have spent my life defending integrity. Today I stand here not as a husband seeking revenge, but as a man demanding truth. He placed the first exhibit on the bench. DNA reports. 2 of the 3 children born during our marriage are biologically fathered by Marcus Hale. Both parties concealed this fact knowingly for years while continuing to benefit from my name and financial resources. The courtroom murmured. Ava's hands trembled. Next came the second folder, the financial logs. Here, Your Honor, are records showing that Mr. Hale transferred firm assets into offshore accounts under my wife's maiden name. Together, they attempted to defraud the company we built. The judge looked up sharply. Mrs. Cole, is this true? Ava's lawyer whispered frantically, but Ava said nothing. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Her silence was answer enough. Ethan continued, his voice steady. They built their comfort on deceit, Your Honor, but deceit leaves paper trails. He turned toward Ava, his eyes calm but cold. You said my lover would be the godfather of our child. You should have said he already was the father. You should have said I was raising another man's legacy while you destroyed mine. The judge called for order as murmurs grew louder. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, this is a private matter. Ethan's attorney cut in, dropping the final exhibit, a signed confession from Marcus's accountant verifying the transfers. The judge scanned the evidence, face hardening. I've seen enough. Mr. Hale, Mrs. Cole, you've both violated marital and corporate trust laws. Mrs. Cole, your spousal privileges are revoked. You forfeit all alimony claims. Mr. Hale, you are hereby ordered to repay all misappropriated funds with penalties. Ava gasped, clutching her stomach. Marcus's face drained of color. Then came the final blow. Custody of Grace Cole, the judge continued, remains solely with Mr. Ethan Cole. The other 2 children are legally the offspring of Mr. Hale, who will assume full financial responsibility. Ethan bowed his head slightly. Thank you, Your Honor. The gavel struck. Judgment delivered. Ava turned to Ethan, her voice breaking. Ethan, please, don't do this. Don't leave me with nothing. He looked at her, his voice soft but final. You left me long before I walked away. I'm just returning what was never mine. The bailiff escorted Marcus out first, followed by Ava, who could barely walk. The flash of cameras followed them into the hall like vultures chasing a wounded animal. Ethan stepped outside minutes later, the crowd parting as he walked through. He didn't stop for interviews or applause. He simply buttoned his coat and said to his lawyer, Send the donation paperwork to the Grace Cole Foundation. I want the press release ready by tomorrow. Claire looked at him curiously. A foundation? Ethan nodded. For children betrayed by their parents' choices, someone has to rebuild what people like them destroy. That night, the news played on every major channel. Wife told her husband, my lover will be the godfather of our baby. Courtroom verdict leaves her in ruin. But Ethan didn't watch it. He sat alone in his quiet home, one photograph of Grace on the table, and whispered, We start over tomorrow. The morning after the verdict, Chicago's skyline looked different to Ethan. Cleaner, lighter, almost peaceful. For the first time in years, he could breathe without the weight of someone else's lies pressing on his chest. But freedom never comes without echoes. The press still swarmed. The headlines screamed. And everyone wanted a quote from the betrayed lawyer who won it all. He didn't speak to anyone. His silence said more than words ever could. Inside his penthouse, the quiet felt honest. No forced laughter, no manipulation disguised as love. Just the faint hum of the city outside and the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. Grace's photo sat on the table beside his coffee, her innocent smile reminding him why he'd fought so hard. Not for vengeance alone, but for truth. Meanwhile, Ava's world crumbled in real time. Her phone never stopped buzzing. Journalists, former friends, distant relatives, all demanding explanations. The luxury apartment Marcus had promised was gone, sold to pay legal restitution. Her bank accounts frozen, her name blacklisted in every PR firm across the state. The woman who once walked into elite charity galas as Mrs. Ethan Cole now hid her face behind sunglasses and regret. Marcus didn't fare better. His empire had collapsed overnight. Former investors sued him for breach of trust. His assets were seized, and his marriage to Diane ended with half his fortune gone. He called Ava one night from an unknown number, his voice thin and defeated. "Ava, we need to leave town, start over, somewhere quiet." She stared at the phone in disbelief. "Leave town? Marcus, there's nothing left to start over with. You destroyed everything." "You helped me," he hissed. "You said you loved me." "I said a lot of things when life was comfortable," she snapped, tears streaming down her face. "But comfort isn't love." She hung up and smashed the phone against the wall. The sound echoed through the hollow apartment like a verdict. Ethan, on the other hand, had moved forward with precision. His firm had doubled in value after the trial. Clients admired his composure under scandal. He donated a portion of the court settlement to launch the Grace Foundation, providing scholarships for children affected by broken homes and custody battles. The public saw him as a hero, but inside, Ethan wasn't celebrating. Revenge didn't heal, it only restored balance. Late one evening, Claire knocked on his office door. "They're asking if you'll attend the award ceremony tomorrow, the Bar Association's Integrity and Law Recognition." Ethan smiled faintly. "Integrity," he murmured. "That's ironic, isn't it?" "You earned it," she said quietly. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe, but I'm not sure anyone wins after betrayal. Only survives." As she left, he opened a drawer and pulled out the old ultrasound photo Ava once framed. He studied it for a long time, not with anger anymore, but with the melancholy of a man who had seen love turn into something unrecognizable. He whispered to himself, "You taught me the price of trust." Then he folded the photo gently and placed it in a box labeled "Closed Cases." Outside his window, the city lights shimmered like scattered promises, some broken, some still burning. Ethan leaned back in his chair, breathing in the quiet victory of a man who had reclaimed his name, his truth, and his peace. But even as the night deepened, one question lingered in his mind. Can a man who wins everything ever forget what he lost? 6 months later, spring rolled through Chicago, washing away the gray that had once mirrored Ethan's heart. The air smelled of renewal, the kind that arrives after everything has been stripped bare. He stood at the gates of Grace's new school, waiting for her to run into his arms, her laughter cutting through the noise of passing cars. She was the only piece of his old life that still felt pure, untouched by the lies, the courtroom, or the cameras. When she spotted him, she sprinted forward, backpack bouncing. "Daddy!" she cried. He crouched to catch her, lifting her effortlessly. "Did you finish your essay?" he asked with a smile. "Yep. It's called Truth Makes People Brave. My teacher said it's really good." He chuckled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You have no idea how true that is." They walked hand in hand to the car. His new car, not the one Ava used to ride in, but a sleek black sedan that smelled of fresh beginnings. Grace hummed a tune in the back seat as he drove toward the foundation's office. The building bore her name, the Grace Cole Foundation, Justice for Children. Inside, walls were lined with photos of families reunited after long legal battles, their smiles a quiet reminder that justice could also heal. Claire met him in the lobby. "We've reached our first 100 beneficiaries," she said proudly. "The press wants a statement." Ethan nodded. "Keep it short." Something about truth outlasting betrayal? Of course, she said, then hesitated. Ava sent another letter. He paused. Burn it. She says she's in counseling, trying to rebuild. Then let her rebuild without my sympathy, he said gently but firmly. We both have our separate redemptions. Claire nodded, respecting the boundary. Later that afternoon, Ethan visited his mentor, Judge Harold Grant, at a quiet cafe overlooking the lake. The old man smiled warmly as Ethan approached. I read about the foundation. You turned your pain into purpose, son. Not many men do that. Ethan sat across from him. It wasn't purpose at first. It was survival. The judge nodded knowingly. Revenge becomes justice only when you use it to protect others, not punish the past. You found that line. Ethan sipped his coffee, gazing at the water. Maybe, but sometimes I wonder if I lost too much in learning that lesson. Grant smiled. Loss is the tuition we pay for wisdom. You've paid yours in full. That evening, Ethan stood on his balcony, watching the city glow beneath a fading sun. For months, his nights had been filled with rage and strategy, but now silence felt clean. Not empty, but earned. He looked down at the world he'd rebuilt, the firm thriving, the foundation expanding, his daughter laughing in the living room. Every fragment of pain had become a building block of something better. He whispered softly, not to Ava, not to Marcus, but to himself. You can't destroy a man who learns from what broke him. Inside, Grace called out, Daddy, come help me with my project. He smiled, turning from the window. Coming, baby. As he walked away, his reflection in the glass looked different. Not the betrayed husband or the victorious lawyer, but a man finally free of both. Outside, the city lights flickered like embers of old fire. Proof that even after betrayal, even after everything is burned, life always finds a way to glow.